May I speak in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please do take a seat. Now, I'd like to begin by asking you a question. My question is this: what do you want? It's a simple question, but one that can be hard to answer, because if we try to answer honestly, the reality is that we may discover something about ourselves that we don't really like. We may have the desire to do good or be seen to be good, but the reality of what shapes us and directs what we want can bring surprising, if perhaps unwanted, results. This same question drives the plot of Andrei Tarkovsky's acclaimed film, Stalker, ranked in the top 50 greatest films of all time by the British Film Institute. Stalker tells the story of a journey led by a guide known as the Stalker, who takes his two clients, a melancholic writer seeking inspiration and a professor pursuing scientific discovery, to a mysterious destination simply known as the Zone. More specifically, their quest is to find something called the Room, which Stalker promises will grant a person's innermost desires. In the room, you will get what you really want. And this is the very reason why both writer and professor begin to have second thoughts as their journey's end brings them to what can only be described as some kind of post-apocalyptic oasis. And yet, as they approach the room, nerves take hold as the realization quickly dawns on them that they are about to come face to face with the deepest desire of their hearts. The room will reveal the reality of what they really, really want. The writer and polymath Jeff Dyer captures this same moment masterfully in a book that he wrote narrating this same film, scene by scene. He says, "They're in a big, abandoned, derelict, dark, damp room with what looks like the remains of an enormous chemistry set floating in the puddle in the middle, as if the zone resulted from an ill-conceived experiment that went horribly wrong. Off to the right, through a large hole in the wall, is a source of light that they all look towards. For a long while, no one speaks. The air is full of the chirpy chirp, cheep cheep of birdsong, as the opposite of those places where the sedge has withered from the lake and no birds sing. The birds are whistling and chirping and singing like mad." Stalker tells writer and professor, tells us that we are now at the very threshold of the room. This is the most important moment in your life, he says. Your innermost wish will be made true here. Faced with the reality of what they really want, both writer and professor freeze. What if the room reveals not what you think you wish for, but instead what you deeply wish for? Something that perhaps your conscious mind has suppressed. What if the way that you live and the things you've done have shaped you in ways that have changed your deepest longings? The haunting question that confronts both writer and professor, and possibly us, is, what if they don't want what they think? Dyer makes a striking observation. Not many people can confront the truth about themselves. If they did, they'd run a mile. So I have a question for you. What do you really want? When things are quiet, when you're on your own, what are you really longing for? Or as the philosopher and theologian Jamie Smith has asked, what do you ultimately love? Now, in a place like this, it may seem that there's an obvious answer. But much like the story of the child in Sunday school who, when asked, "What is small, grey, furry, and lives in trees?" replies, "Well, I know the answer's Jesus, but that sure sounds a lot like a squirrel to me." We may know the right answer to what we want, but our deepest longing may be revealed in surprising ways. And in our gospel reading this morning, we hear of Jesus on a journey. It's a journey of longing and of expectation. And along the way, he's confronted by those who have their own wants and desires. At face value, it would seem their greatest want is to be healed from leprosy. And so, Jesus does just that. But, much like the room, what we then find out is the deeper longing of their hearts. Once healed, 9 of the 10 just carry on their way. They don't stop, they don't look back. Their deepest desire is oriented inward. But one of them is different. When healed, one of them, in fact, the most unexpected one of them, a Samaritan, immediately returns to Jesus. No longer exiled, his healing reveals that his innermost longing was to know love. And this love was and is ultimately found in the person of Jesus. It turns out that our deepest longing, what we really want, is not something we spend much time thinking about. Instead, it's something shaped by our daily lives, by habits acquired through the things we do, week in and week out. Or as Jamie Smith puts it, you are what you love. And this is why Christian worship can often find itself in a head-on collision with the demands and realities of how we really live. Within our cultural landscape, there is what we think we want, and there's what we actually want. So often there's a gap between what draws us towards rival gods, or what we think the good life may look like, and the sort of life that shapes us towards love. But to be the people called church, a community of practice that asks questions about the devices and desires of our own hearts, is to recognize that, if we're honest with ourselves, what we really want can go astray sometimes. To find ourselves in a habit of worship is to return to the life of gratitude that brings us closer to God. Jesus says to the Samaritan, the one who would have experienced isolation his entire life, and having fallen at his feet, that he should now get up, go on your way, your faith has made you well. All 10 were physically healed, but only one was filled with gratitude, and only one became fully reconciled to God. And so, this is it. Who wants to go first? Who would want to step into the room? This is the place where you can have what you want, what you really want. And if we are what we love, I have a question. What do you think you really want? Amen.